Greetings, I'm Nicole Gates, your CEO brandologist, and this is the CEO Mindset Virtual. And I am joined today by my co-host, my beautiful co-host, Miss Katrina Kimball. Hey, Katrina, it's good to be back.
Yes, it is good to be back. Season 2. We are so excited to be back with you, the CEO Mindset. And what a better time to start off than in March, which celebrates Women's History Month. So we are so excited to be back, and we're got a lot of surprises in store for you. So I'm excited about it, Nicole. We're going to have a good topic tonight for them.
Absolutely. So I'm super excited to be back. Last year, of course, we filmed the whole time, like during the first part of the pandemic. It was super exciting, but a little scary, I think, at the same time. But we're glad to be back in front of you all on a Wednesday night, sharing some tips, some empowerment, something to educate all of our fellow CEOs out there who are still getting it in and had to pivot during the pandemic. So tonight we are going to talk about the power of your story, and I absolutely love this topic. It is so befitting. This is March and Women's History Month. A lot of things that we can celebrate this year. We have our first female vice president. We have all these CEOs that are like seriously rocking business. We have elevated on so many levels. The pandemic, yes, it threw us a curveball, but women have rose to the occasion. Oh my God, women-owned businesses are at the top of the game. I want to give a shout out, of course, to our sponsor for the CEO Mindset, Mr. Charlie Caswell and the Legacy of Legends CDC, who generously offered to be our title sponsor for our virtual platform. So we thank him. They are doing great work, Katrina, trying to mitigate adverse childhood experiences for our kids. They're doing work here in the Memphis community, really planting their feet and making some things happen. But as you know, Charlie loves to be worldwide, so he is connecting with people all over, really, to make things happen in their cities as well. So we appreciate the work, and we appreciate Legacy of Legends for all the things that they're doing in the Memphis community. I want to just get right into this, right? This
Yeah.
topic is so like powerful, the power of your story. So, Katrina, I want you to kind of intro us and let us know, why is that important? The story, our story.
You know, the power of your story lays the framework for sharing your story with other people. I think what made us talk about this topic was last season. I remember you told me you were working with a young lady and she didn't want to be the face of her product. How can you not be your own brand ambassador? How are you going to have a business or even be a consultant or even work in nonprofit, whatever you're going to do? Telling your story is what's going to open up doors of opportunity for you. And a lot of times, the reason why we're not comfortable telling our story is because we're not comfortable with our own voice. We're not used to hearing ourselves tell our story. And we're not used to being authentic and honest in telling our story. So I think it's really important that as we dive into this topic tonight about telling your story, there are some basic principles that everyone needs to know. One, you got to tell your story and tell it in your own voice. You got to own your story. Nobody knows your story but you. Don't make the assumption that everybody knows what's going on. Even if they've known you 20 years, they don't know what you're doing. I have family members. They have no clue what I do. They like, she just gone all the time, and they don't know. But, that's my job to tell the story and then build trust as you tell the story. So as we dive into this, Nicole, tonight, I want to break this down into bite size because the one thing we strive to do is make sure we give the entrepreneurs, the people that are listening, giving you tools that you can use to elevate your business, empower yourself, and then educate people about your business. So I'm really excited about what we're going to talk about tonight, Chloe.
Okay, well, listen, I don't know if any of our audience has been following us on Clubhouse, but we actually tackled this topic a couple of days ago on Clubhouse. And I thought it was so incredibly interesting when you made the comment. You said, look, you cannot be one person on Instagram and another person on Facebook and another person on Twitter and another person on LinkedIn. People are going to start to think that you have a split personality.
Yeah, that's our first point.
So
That's our
funny.
first point. Yes.
absolutely amazing. And I started thinking about that. Sometimes I think we feel like, our social media platforms have a different vibe and we have to switch with that vibe. But really, the idea is for you, in order for you to be authentic, kind of keep it on an even playing field, right? Whatever you're putting on IG, Twitter, LinkedIn, or Facebook should all coincide. It should all link together. They should still see the same face, right?
Absolutely. And that's our very first point is that when you're telling your story, you have to be honest and authentic. And the only way you're going to do that is if you're clear, concise, and consistent in your message, regardless of who you're sharing your story or how you're sharing your story should be the same. Like we said on Clubhouse, I shouldn't look at Instagram and then look at TikTok and then look over at Facebook and see, five different people. You're detailing cars, you're walking a dog over here, you're making wigs over here, and then you're selling masks over here. No, even if you have multiple streams of income, which I think is very important, especially in this economy, but your streams of income should tie in together. There should be a constant theme. I like to use, for example, all the time, Oprah Winfrey. One thing that Oprah Winfrey did, she took communication and tied it into everything she did. She went from interviewing people on TV to having a talk show to having a publication to now she does podcasts and now she has a TV special called Super Sunday. But if you notice, the constant stream in everything is communication. She just diversified that one thing. And how we end up hurting ourselves as small business owners is that we don't know how to share our story and be honest and authentic about it. And if you don't practice your story, it's not about making something up, but just tell the truth. Just be honest and authentic with it. And one of the things we believe in is that you under promise and over deliver. So that's the first step. You got to get used to hearing your voice and you got to be honest with yourself. Don't tell people that you sold since the pandemic. I've sold 200,000 masks and you've only sold 1,000.
I laugh because the funny thing is I've been actually kind of digging in. I pop in and out of Clubhouse, and they have some really interesting clubhouses on there. And one of them talked about being an imposter, the imposter syndrome, I believe is what they were talking about. And I was like, "Ooh, let me see what this is about." What are they talking about? Is it kind of, I was like, imposter. That means people that's faking the funk, pretty much. And so, what I did notice during the pandemic, you had a lot of people selling people on, how to make $10,000 in a month. I mean, like seriously. So if it sounds too good to be true, 9 times out of 10, it is. I'm not saying it's impossible. I believe anything is possible. However, you want to make sure that it's your story is authentic. Can people do some fact checking and find out, are you really the person that you say you are? One of the other things I remember you saying on our clubhouse was you have to not assume that everybody knows your story already. Why do we not want to do that?
That's point two. Don't make the assumption that everybody knows your story. It doesn't matter if you've been in business 1 day, 1 hour, 1,000 hours. Whenever you're talking to someone, I remember when I took a business class, and one of the things they taught us was you, in your mind, imagine that the person you talk to has $1 million in their pocket, and they're their first time meeting you. Every time you share your story, it's like talking to a millionaire. Because the thing is, you're not just talking to that person, you're talking to the people that person knows. They may not need your service. They may not even care about your business, but they may know somebody that knows somebody that could use your business. And I'll use me for example. My kids fuss at me because I like to leave the house looking nice. I'm not gonna be in the nines, but I'm gonna have this fro right. I'm gonna have a little lip gloss on my lips because I was out one day at a store and I met a lady I had been trying to do some business with, and we ended up on the same grocery store aisle. And because I started talking to her and I was able to share my story, and she said, "Oh, someone told me about you." And our stories aligned. She was willing to work with me and give me a chance, even though she didn't know me that well. And so that's why you got to know your story. And that's why you got to share your story and be authentic in how you do it. And it doesn't matter how much you spend on your website. You could have the fanciest infographics, you could have the flyers IG, but if it's not consistent and it's not sharing the same message and it's not truly reflecting who you are, it's not gonna support you. It's not gonna draw people to you. And I want to add this one quick tip. Don't mad or don't assume that your family is going to support you. Everybody in your family, they have jobs and they have jobs for a reason because they want to work. And there's nothing wrong with having a job. I have a job in a part-time business. But everybody doesn't have the interest in being an entrepreneur. And everybody's not going to support you because they think you need to stop what you're doing and go pick up an extra shift at FedEx and throw boxes. That's fine. But it's not about them. So know your story, tell your story, but tell your story to the people that want to hear it. Stop trying to tell your story to your family. They don't want to hear your story. They still think you're the same kid that jumped off the house when you was a kid. Somebody dared you to jump off the house. So don't try to tell your story to them.
Yes, I love it. I love it. And you know what? You crack me up. We can. We really can assume that people are going to know our story because they don't. But how do people? Because I think some of our audience might be listening to what we're saying. And how do you get to the point where you perfect your story? Like for me, it just came natural. I can tell my story. My story is, I moved to Memphis. I was married when I moved here. Ended up divorced. About less than a year later, I had to start over. Literally had to start over. I remember robbing Peter to pay Paul. I tell people that story all the time. So for me as an entrepreneur, I remember being at the rock bottom. Like literally that rock bottom experience is what carried me into where I am now, having to rebuild my network. So I can talk about that because it's something I'm passionate about. And I understand female entrepreneurs that are right now at the bottom who really can't see the forest for the trees. They want to make it. They feel like giving up. I remember being there 1,000 times over. So I can always speak to that because that's something I'm passionate about. But what about that person that may have just started their business during the pandemic, may have started it right before the pandemic, and then the pandemic came, threw us this curveball, and they felt like, oh my God, I just got started with this. I want to give up. How do they go back, reach back, and really capture the passion that they had initially and craft their story to be able to share that with others? What's the best way for them to get started?
And Nicole, I can relate to everything you're saying. I used to work in human resources. I thought I was working for a Fortune 500 company. I just knew I was going to be the first black VP of HR at that company. You couldn't tell me I was not going to be the one. Yeah, I jumped through all the hoops, took all the classes, got certification. I sure was the one. They laid me off, not once, not twice, three times. I got laid off by the same company three times. So, what we have to do, and I know this may be challenging, we have to give ourselves more credit. Um, there's no harm in starting over. I can't tell you how many times I started over. Me, Nicole, you and I've been riding for a long time. We've done successful single moms. We've done mom university. I mean, we've done so many things together, and we're like, okay, this ain't working. Let's switch gears. I mean, that's just life. You have to shift gears, but this is where you get your courage. Is you look back on those past victories. Sometimes we don't give our past enough credit. There were other things in your life that you thought was going to take you out that didn't. Go back and pull on that. Stop thinking because you don't have the alphabet soup behind your name and 15,000 letters, you don't have nothing to offer. You have a lot to offer. You have a lot more skills than you think you do. And again, I'll be transparent. I got accepted in a program right now. I'm going through this certification program to become a project manager. I didn't think because I had an advanced degree, I should even be in the program. But once they interviewed me and I started talking about all the different community activities I've done, the different things I've done with us done through successful single moms and all these different things, the people that interview me, they're like, you got tons of experience. You just need to understand the new principles and take the certification. And so what I would say to anybody that's right now, because I felt that way right before the pandemic started, I was like, I'm so through. I'm going to go somewhere and sit down. Somebody else can do this. But when the pandemic hit, people started calling me. Can you do this workshop? Can you talk to this group of people? Can you help do this? So don't discredit yourself. Look back on your past successes in your life. no matter what it was. If you were successful selling Girl Scout cookies, you go back and make a list of everything that you were successful at and pull from that. So, Nicole, that's what I would tell somebody. Don't count yourself out. Don't count yourself out.
I love that, Katrina. And I know you cracked me up. Oh my gosh, I was over here just dying because you said just because you don't have the alphabet soup behind you, that's all those letters. That caught me. Hilarious. You cracked me up with that. But we talked about building a trust ladder. What is a trust ladder? What is that?
So, when I was working in human resources, and I one of my jobs was to hire the new marketers for this company. And one of the things I learned early was that whether we like it or not, everything is about a relationship. Your relationship you're going to have with your clients, the relationships you have with your family, the relationship you have with yourself. It's all about building trust. And so I'm going to go through these because some of these you may not have heard before, and these might be new to the people that are listening. But when you're engaging with people, they're in one of these categories. The first one is when you have a prospect. We all know that, you send out your MailChimp list, or you post something and you hope it, you're throwing stuff and you hope it lands somewhere. So that's a prospect. That's a person that, they don't even know anything about you, but they're considering doing business with you. Then you have what we call your client. Those are your transitional relationships. That's your transitional trust. That's that person who's going to swipe the card. That's what we all want. We want somebody to swipe the card. They're going to purchase something. We don't know if they're going to come back or not, but we're going to get the card swiped at least once. Then the next level, and that's when you really start building a relationship. That's when you have that customer. That's that person that comes back and utilizes your business. They may come back once a quarter. They may come back twice a month. It kind of depends on how your business flow, but you're trying to build a customer base. But what we all are striving for is what I call the top of the ladder. That's that top, that loyalty ladder. That's that person that's going to be your advocate. That's that person that knows your story, that can tell your story better than you can. That's that person that's sending referrals to you. That's the person that's going on Facebook telling everybody, no, if you want eyeshadow, get eyeshadow from her. She's telling you, if you want the best subscription box, get the CEO subscription box. That's that person that knows your story so well that they will go out and find somebody to help fund your business. Like, girl, I don't have a $2, but she's got 2,000, and she's got an event coming up, and she needs somebody to help her. And that's what we want. But this is the thing. If we're not clear, concise, and consistent in telling our stories, we will never get to advocates. We will never get to the top of that ladder. What we will always find ourselves doing is toggling between a prospect and a client. We are never going to get to the customer, and we'll never get to advocacy. So that's why it's important, Nicole, that we tell our story, because that has a negative or a positive impact on our business. It's all about relationships, Nicole. We got to be able to build that trust ladder and get those relationships established if we're going to sustain our business, even in the midst of a pandemic.
Oh yes, it's definitely about relationships. Most recently, I've been doing, the pandemic has done some incredible things. So you have tons of webinars, tons of free resources out there that women can actually take part in. And I was actually on a webinar recently where they talked about funding, right? And so, with the pandemic, a lot of funding came down, the pipes for small business owners. Now, of course, we know at the beginning, initially, it was a big fiasco. A lot of big businesses were getting the money and small businesses were getting left out. But they did put in play a lot of resources for female business owners, which I absolutely love. But one of the things that they did to kind of prepare the ladies, several organizations have been doing this. They host these webinars, and you can get on the webinars, usually free. But the first thing that I noticed is they are teaching them how to tell their story, because your story is very much aligned with why you do the business that you do. Why are you passionate about it? Because first of all, if you're not passionate about it, you need to back up, really back up. If you're not passionate about what you're doing, you shouldn't be doing it. It makes absolutely no sense. If your business drives you absolutely bonkers, you shouldn't be doing it. But if you love it, and this is something that you would do without pay, you absolutely love it, then you need to learn to tell your story. Your story is very much connected to the success of your business. And before I fund you as a funder, I want to know your story. I want to see how that story impacted you and why I should give you this money. What are you going to do with it? When you get it, are you helping, women that are homeless? My passion has always been female entrepreneurs, in particular, those that work from home, because we do have a home based community of entrepreneurs that, for a long time have been forgotten. The pandemic came, and guess what? Everybody's working from home. Whether you work for corporate America or not, you had the opportunity more than likely to work from home, even if it was for, a very short period of time. The game changed. Now we have to start looking at those home based businesses and really treating them with some respect because they do a lot of great work behind the scenes. So that power of your story is absolutely amazing. So, Katrina, real quick, if you would recap for us the things that you need to be able to do in order to tell your story and tell it in a very powerful way that people remember it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes, the power of your story is not only about funding, but sometimes just connecting you with the right to get you in the right room with the people. Sometimes it's just about opening those doors. So, what we want to do, the 3 points I want you to remember tonight is one, be honest and authentic. Know your story. You've been with yourself longer than you've been with anybody in this world. If anybody should know your story, you should know your story. Number two, don't make the assumption that everybody else knows your story. We all got bills to pay. We got kids and dogs and cats to feed. We got stuff going on. We don't know what's going on with you all the time. Don't make the assumption that people know your story. And it's not that they don't care. It's just called life. And then number three, focus on building trust with every person you interact with because everything is a transaction and it could lead to anything from a business opportunity to just putting you in the right room with the right people. So tell your story, own your story. Don't make assumptions that people know your story and build trust with every interaction with a person. So that's all I have for tonight, Nicole. And that's the things I think that are important to continue to build your brand and just be effective and powerful in what you do.
And you know what, Katrina, building that story and telling your story, we always talk about mindful living. And that's something that I think we need to put at the forefront. Our story really matters. It does matter. And if you don't believe that your story matters, then I'm going to ask you again, reevaluate. You better reevaluate why you are doing the business you are in. And don't be afraid. And I know, Katrina, you started off talking about this. Recently, I had a client that did not want to be the face of her business. And I was like, you have to be. Like, nobody can tell your story like you can. You need to be the face of the business. So we finally got her to kind of turn around. And it was a challenge. It was really a challenge for her because she hadn't practiced that. But I'm going to encourage any female entrepreneur that is out there, start practicing your story. What is your story? Write it down. I think I've written mine 1,001 times. I've narrowed it down. Sometimes it calls for me to tell a little bit more and I've had to extend it, so you will have different versions. It'll be all the same story, but you might have a shorter version of that story, a longer version of that story is somewhere in between, right? But tell your story. The power of your story is very, very important. So next week, we'll come back. We'll see you guys here again on next week. I'm super excited to bring it on this platform. I think this allows us to still be safe at home because we're both at home, working from home and doing our thing. We haven't forgotten about you. So we want to remind you to always remember where you started, be present in the present, and trust where you're going. Trust that process. We'll see you next week. Good night, Katrina.
Good night, everybody. Look forward to seeing you next week.